Hello everyone, this is Serious Trivia, and today we're going to do a deep dive on why both the elder abbot Jin Shi and the black bear monster in the Journey to the West coveted Seng's Kasaya, and also explain what a Kasaya is, as this Sanskrit term for a traditional Buddhist robe can be quite foreign even to those who are familiar with the novel, as this term was often translated as a cassock in many of the English versions. Additionally, because Seng's Kasaya was also an important but poorly explained element central to the Chapter 1 ending cinematic in the game Black Myth Wukong, I will also be providing my interpretation of the cinematic, as well as sharing a real-life story regarding a truly priceless Kasaya at the end of this video. So let's get things started. First off, the Sanskrit word Kasaya originally referred to a type of plant that had mixed colored leaves, which in turn resembled the mixed color nature of the original Kasaya that was patched together from whatever scraps of clothing that the monks can acquire, either through charity or even from the bodies of the dead. The patchwork nature of these robes served three main purposes in the early days of Buddhism in India. First, it distinguished the Buddhist monk from the practitioners of Hinduism, who typically wore solid-colored robes. Second, it served as a constant reminder to the wearer that he needed to be void of the desires for materialistic goods. And lastly, it also showed everyone, believers and non-believers alike, that Buddhist monk, whose beliefs forbid them from participating in the production of goods, food, and other services, were not using their religious tenet as an excuse to enrich themselves from the charities of their believers. So in a sense, the early versions of the Kasaya were meant to be a way for Buddhist monks to dress down and justify his place in society as someone who does not work, does not farm, and does not serve, as participating in these affairs of the mortal realm will only taint their path towards true enlightenment. But as time went on, and Buddhism spread within India and beyond its borders, the Kasaya evolved from being just a simple patched-up robe for keeping warmth into more of a uniform and a sense of identity for Buddhist monks. For example, in India, after different sects started to form within Buddhism, the Kasaya started to become more color-coded to represent your particular sect or your particular temple, and single-color Kasaya started to become more common. Now, because the Journey to the West was a Chinese story, we have to shift our focus from the traditional meaning of Kasaya to the localized Chinese term Jia Sha, which is honestly the term that I wish Game Science would have used for its English localization. Coming from a transliteration of the Sanskrit term Kasaya, Jia Sha was a phrase that was officially coined during the Jin dynasty in the 4th century as Buddhism took its root in China. While this phrase no longer sounds like Kasaya, this is more or less a result of the changes in the pronunciation of the spoken Chinese language over the course of history, while the written characters remained the same. Another key difference aside from the pronunciation is that while the Kasaya in India typically referred to the three pieces of clothing that included the lower body garment, the upper body garment, and a robe that covered the entire body except for the right shoulder and arm, the Chinese Jia Sha only refers to this robe piece. This is why depictions of the Jia Sha in media adaptations of The Journey to the West often show a rectangular piece of garment. While the same patchwork design and meaning behind the robe was passed to Chinese Buddhism, most Jia Sha were of a single color that often matched the predominant color used by government officials of the current ruling dynasty. For example, during the Han Dynasty, Jia Sha were mostly red, before transitioning to black and blue as the dynasties changed. Government influence on the color of the Jia Sha would increase over time as Buddhist monks would eventually become an officially recognized class of citizens within China. Now, going back to the story of the Journey to the West and Seng's Jia Sha in particular, the origins of his robe comes directly from the Rulai Buddha. In chapter 8 of the novel, Guanyin Pusa volunteers to become Rulai's messenger to travel east to the Tang Empire in order to find the suitable monk who would come west for the 3 sets of scriptures. To aid Guanyin in this endeavor, Rulai gifted Guanyin 5 gifts in total that included the Jia Sha, or the gold embroidered robe, the 9环锡杖, or the 9 rings 10 staff, and 3 golden circlets. The first 2 gifts were meant to be passed on to the eventual chosen monk, as these 2 traditional Buddhist accessories both had magical properties bestowed on them to help protect their owner. In chapter 12 of the novel, Guanyin would go on to elaborate on the craftsmanship and effects of the Jia Sha to the Tang Emperor, as the robe was said to be made from the threads spun from ice silkworms that were skillfully woven by celestial maidens on a divine loom. Each section of the robe was meticulously embroidered and layered with brocades, giving it a vibrant glow of color. When worn, it would emit a mist of red around its wearer, and when removed, it would leave behind a trail of rainbow. At each corner of the rectangular robe was a luminous pearl, and at its center a giant emerald that reflected the brilliance of the 8 auspicious treasures of Buddhism. Meant to be only worn during sacred occasions, the robe still had powers when folded and stored away, as it contained the wish-fulfilling bead, the many bead, the dust-repelling bead, and the wind-stealing bead, along with a wide variety of rare gems that included red agate, purple corals, pearls, and relic remains from enlightened monks of the past. Capable of absorbing the moonlight to emit a light that rivals even the brightest sun, it gives off a wisp of immortal energy that fills the skies, summoning clouds that would startle all manners of beasts, including the dragons of the sea. So as you can see, this is no ordinary Jia Sha or robe, and it is no wonder why the elder abbot Jin Shi of the Guanyin Temple would lust over this one robe, despite already having a collection of close to 800. In essence, Jin Shi represented the human nature of greed in the original novel. His attachment to material possessions through the collection of nearly 800 Jia Sha contradicted directly with the original intentions behind these Buddhist robes, as they were meant to be just scraps of cloth put together to provide the bare minimum amount of warmth and protection to survive during one's path towards true enlightenment. This is further reinforced with Jin Shi's abnormally long life in the original novel, as with the help of his friend, the Black Bear monster, Jin Shi was able to extend his life past the age of 270, and thus, with enough robes to wear a different one for 2 years straight without repeating, and having lived more than 3 full lifetimes, Jin Shi embodied the unending nature of human greed. But more than greed itself, Jin Shi's particular form of greed is also based on the concept of public recognition. In the eyes of the masses, Jin Shi's longevity and fancy robes became a misrepresentation of his closeness to true enlightenment. In a sense, only those who have wealth, whether that is a wealth of life or a wealth of material goods, can preach that they do not care about wealth, as how can one renounce something if they never have possessed it in the first place? What is more cynical? Hearing the richest man in the world claim that he does not care about money, or hearing the same thing from a poor street beggar who has no money? This is not an easy question, and it does not have a simple answer. And in either case, the interactions between Jin Shi and the party of Tang Seng and Wukong in the journey to the west is really a trial for both sides. If Jin Shi had resisted his initial temptation and let Tang Seng's divine Jia Sha go, then he would have successfully passed his trial towards true enlightenment, as all his prior greed would have been justified as merely the process of possessing before his ultimate renouncement. But of course, the story would not go this way, as Jin Shi would fail his trial, opting for murderous intent in order to secure the prize Jia Sha. In the end, his choices burned down the very temple that provided him with the prestige, recognition, and status that he falsely saw as a representation of his own enlightenment. And with the prize Jia Sha stolen by the black bear monster during the fire, Jin Shi ended up committing suicide by bashing his head into the wall, as now both his material possession and longevity would be stripped from him. Now, at the end of our video here, I want to move away from the fictional tales of the journey to the West and share a real-life story of a prize and priceless Jia Sha. And this story would begin on the fateful day of May 12, 2008, in a place called Wenchuan, located in the Sichuan province of China. At 2:28 in the afternoon, a magnitude 8.0 earthquake struck this mountainous region, bringing an unimaginable level of destruction impacting nearly 50 million people, spanning across 186 counties. In this natural disaster of unprecedented scale, 69,227 people would be eventually confirmed killed, with another 17,923 forever missing. And from the countless stories of human perseverance, kindness, charity, and hope, I want to just share one story from the Luohan Temple in the city of Shifang. Now, the Luohan Temple, or Luohan Si, was first constructed during the Tang Dynasty in 209, and it became famous for its 500 Luohan, or Arhat statues that depicted these disciples and followers of Buddha. Now, because of its age, as it was last rebuilt during the 17th century, the Luohan Temple was one of the few large wooden structures in the city of Shifang when the shock waves of the earthquake first impacted the city. This was important because the traditional wooden joint construction of the temple made it almost immune to the effects of the earthquake, thus providing a place of safe refuge for many of the displaced civilians, especially considering the risk of continuous and numerous aftershocks that would occur. Thus, the temple, that housed just 60 monks, took in over 800 refugees on the day of the earthquake. By the third day, this number ballooned to over 1,400, as the temple struggled to provide supplies to these refugees, with their month worth of food disappearing almost overnight. But despite these difficulties, the temple under the leadership of their abbot, Su Jing, continued to provide refuge to those in need for more than 3 months as they exhausted all their resources to secure food, water, and tent for those in need. Of these many refugees, a special group from the city's maternity hospital created a special challenge for Abbot Su Jing and the monks of the Luohan Temple, as according to their Buddhist faith, the temple and the monks are forbidden to house female guests, especially those who are going to give birth, as the exposure of their private parts during birth was sacrilegious, and a taboo of the no blood spilled tenet. Despite this, Abbot Su Jing made it quite clear early on that there is no greater taboo in Buddhism than to abandon those who could be saved, as prayer tables were cleared and pieced together to form temporary surgery tables, doors were removed to make temporary beds, and even sheets used to shield the Buddhist statues from the elements that the temple was known for were removed to make temporary tents and covers. This was particularly problematic as heavy rains followed the earthquake, making it difficult for both the survivors and the rescue workers trying to restore roads and bring in supplies. And during this difficult period, the monks of the Luohan Temple voluntarily gave up their rooms to the expected mothers as they opted to squat outside with just the umbrella to shield themselves from the rain overnight. And to help these new mothers recover after giving birth, Abbot Su Jing broke another Buddhist taboo by allowing meat to be cooked and consumed within the temple. By the end of the 3-month period, exactly 108 expected mothers gave birth within the Luohan temple. Only 2 babies had health complications, but fortunately, every baby and mother would survive and go on to live healthy lives. And on the 5th anniversary of the earthquake in 2013, all 108 families returned to the temple and presented Abbot Su Jing with the priceless gift of a Jia Sha made from the cutouts of the 108 bed sheets of the 108 babies that were born in the temple in the aftermath of the earthquake. Now, as an atheist myself, I do not believe in higher powers, but I do appreciate the core teachings of all major religions across the world, as in their basis form, they're all teachings of human compassion and kindness. And more importantly, I hope stories like this one will show that sometimes choosing not to follow rigid religious tenets and breaking religious taboos can also lead to true enlightenment. So hopefully you guys have enjoyed this video on the Kasaya or Jia Sha in Chinese, and I hope to do more of these short deep dive lore videos on different elements that you might find from the Journey to the West or the game Black Myth Wukong in the future. And until then, bye!